Greetings to you all, dear viewers of The Pioneer, from a new day and a new report. How are you doing? I hope you're healthy and well. Today I'm here again to bring you the developments on the last day of the Russian-Ukrainian war. The Russian-Ukrainian war continues at full speed and intensity. Ukrainian troops are waging a tremendous struggle against the Russian army. The Russian army is in a very difficult situation. What we have expressed for a long time, especially regarding the Kherson front line, remains valid. When we look at the latest reports, we see that the Russian army is cornered on the Kherson front line. The Ukrainian army inflicted heavy losses on the Russian army with its attacks. There are reports that the Russian troops have been defeated at many points. We cannot consider this defeat as a retreat. This defeat is more related to the fact that the losses of the Russian army are very intense. So, what's the latest situation on the front line? Let's examine the developments together. As the Pioneer team, we continue to inform you about the Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so as not to miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. You can also support me and my team working hard for you by using the super thanks button below the video. Let's start if you are ready. The Pioneer reports. Now we start with the latest developments on the Kherson front line. We have expressed to you in our report in the past days. Within a critical attack here, the Ukrainian army destroyed the air defense system of the Russian army, which is called the drone killer. Local sources state that there was a great demoralization in the Russian army after this incident. This attack in the region clearly shows that the Ukrainian army has carried out important attacks not only on the front line, but also behind the front line. According to the latest reports, the clashes between the Ukrainian armed forces and the Russian armed forces are largely clustered on the eastern bank of the Dnieper River. According to the recent reports, Ukrainian Marines are carrying out critical and violent attacks in this region. These attacks have worn down the Russian army considerably. The fact that the Ukrainian army also supports these attacks makes the Russian army's job even more difficult. We see that the Ukrainian Marines are attacking in the direction of Krinky and entering the forest belt here. This is a new development. The fact that the clashes in the region are focused in the forest belt makes the Russian army's job more difficult. The attacks can be considered as a kind of residential clashes. Here, the operations of the Ukrainian troops in the region have already worn out the Russian army. There is a great loss of motivation in the Russian army. In addition, as far as we know, the Marines are also experienced in the residential neighborhood operations. The aim of the Marines of the Ukrainian armed forces here is to reach the M14 motorway. If they succeed, the Russian armed forces will have a serious problem. Ukrainian troops in the area would thus gain an important advantage over the main supply lines of the Russian army in Mariupol. Let's talk about artillery attacks in the region. Recent reports indicate that the artillery units of the Russian armed forces targeted Dniprovsky, Belgorod and Kherson. Artillery units of the Ukrainian armed forces targeted the Russian armed forces in Genchiesk, Hola Pristan, Alyoshki, Poima, Pechenovka, Podestepnoe, Kazakh camps, Kursunka, and Priani. Now let's continue by analyzing the latest developments in the Robotny sector of the Zaporizhia front line. As you know, the Ukrainian army is trying to capture the positions of the Russian army in the Verbov direction. Here, especially the attempt of the Ukrainian troops to get behind the Russian troops is very important. In our previous reports, we have mentioned the developments related to the defense line of the Russian army in this region many times. Therefore, we don't feel the need to address the same issue again. Ukrainian troops are similarly conducting offensive operations in the western parts of Novoprokopivka and Robotny. If Ukrainian troops are able to expand their positions there, one of the most important parts of the counteroffensive will be completed. Therefore, the Russian armed forces are persistently trying to push the Ukrainian troops back. However, it is possible to state that the Ukrainian defense line in the region is still as strong as the old days. Let's talk about the artillery activities in the region. According to the latest reports, Russian artillery units targeted Ukrainian positions in Orikhiv, Robotny, and Novodanilovka. In turn, Ukrainian artillery units targeted positions of the Russian armed forces in the Ichengo, Novoprokopivka, Kopani, Solatka Balka, and Pechenkin direction. Let us continue by analyzing the latest developments in the Beholder sector of the Zaporizhia front line. As you know, The Russian army has been making intensive efforts to seize Destroyersk and Yorkhain, which have been under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. However, we see that these efforts have still not yielded any results. Today's reports also continue the attacks of the Russian armed forces against these two regions, but there is no results. Ukrainian forces in the region continue to maintain their dominance. Let's continue by mentioning the artillery activities in the region. According to the latest reports, artillery units of the Russian armed forces are targeting positions of the Ukrainian armed forces in Levandy, Rivnopol, Belagotdatny, Pechenivtovka, Bogielavdetka, and Vodyadnoy. Artillery units of the Ukrainian armed forces targeted positions of the Russian armed forces in the direction of Priodny, Zavidny Bajania, Estermelinka, and Novodonetsk. Now let's continue with the developments on the Donetsk front line. As you know, this is the only area where the Russian army is in offensive position. Unfortunately, we have to say that the situation here has become quite difficult for the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukrainian troops are really showing significant resistance. However, the meat attacks carried out by the Russian army are quite furious. In addition, there is an image as if the Russian army has gathered all its artillery units on this front. Russian artillery units are carrying out quite intense attacks. When we look at the latest reports, we see that after the shelling, units of the Russian armed forces carried out offensive operations from Marinka, Severnoe, Yasynodovodska fork to Avdiivka, near Stepnoe and Novokalinov. These operations are quite violent. Ukrainian forces are responding with all their might to these offensive operations of the Russian armed forces. However, we think that Ukrainian forces should also consider a tactical withdrawal here. Let us conclude our report by mentioning the artillery activity in the region. According to the latest reports, long-range guns of the Russian armed forces targeted positions of Ukrainian armed forces in Novomikhailovka, Gorogiivka, Krasnogorovka, Nevelskoye, Natilyov, Yosnaporovka, Donetskoy, Karminka, Sukhaya Balka, and New York. The artillery of the Ukrainian army targeted the artillery positions of the Russian army in the region. What do you think? Do you think the Ukrainian army will be able to break the Russian siege on Donetsk front line? Do you think the Russian army can regain the initiative on the Kherson front line? What do you think about the latest developments on the Zaporizhia front line? Let me know in the comments. I read and care about all your comments.